Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Stephen Eiderstein. Thank y'all for joining me again this weekend as we do the next beatitude in Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount, which is a interpretation and understanding of Jesus Christ in the Bible's Sermon on the Mount as per the Gospel of Matthew, I believe. I believe so. Yes. Matthew 5, I think it is. Let me check real quick. I think he's got it written under these. Yeah, Matthew 5. So, I'm looking forward to it. Of course, the next beatitude we're actually going to be doing is, "Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." Now, the way this one's going to go is I'm going to read the beatitude from this copy of Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount from 1938. This was originally copyrighted and released in 1934. So it's pretty accurate, or pretty close to original as possible. That's always important to me, to actually get some of the original, or as close to the original as possible. And after I am done going through just a straight reading of it, I'll go ahead and do a overview of it from my understanding, how it's impacted me and impacted my life. So I'm excited about it. Thank y'all for joining me again, as I stated earlier. So here we go. This is from Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount, the second chapter. "Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Righteousness is another of the great key words of the Bible, one of those keys that the reader must have in his possession if he is to get at the true meaning of the book, like earth and meek and comfort. It is a technical term used in a special and definite sense. Righteousness means, in the Bible, not merely right conduct, but right thinking on all subjects in every department of life. As we study the Sermon on the Mount, we shall find that every clause in it reiterating the great truth that outside things are but the expressed or pressed out of our, or outpicturing of our inner thoughts and beliefs, that we may have dominion or power over our thoughts to think as we will, and thus indirectly we make or mar our lives by the way in which we do think. Jesus will constantly tell us in these discourses that we have no direct power over outer things, because these outer things are but consequences, or, if you like, resultant pictures of what goes on in the secret place. If it were possible for us to affect externals directly without changing our thought, it would mean we could think one thing and produce another. And this would be contrary to the law of the universe. Indeed, it is just this very notion which is the basic fallacy that lies in the root of all human trouble, all sickness and sin, all strife and poverty, and even death itself. The great law of the universe, however, is just this: that what you think in your mind will you produce in your experience. As within, so without. You cannot think one thing and produce another. If you want to control your circumstances for harmony and happiness, you must first control your thoughts for harmony and happiness, and then the outer things will follow. If you want health, you must think health. And remember, thinking health does not mean merely thinking a healthy body, important as that is, but it also includes thinking peace and contentment and goodwill for all. For, as we shall see later on in the sermon, destructive emotion is one of the primary causes of disease. If you want spiritual unfoldment and growth in the knowledge of God, you must give spiritual thoughts God thoughts, and give your attention, which is your life, to God rather than to limitation. If you want material prosperity, you must first think of prosperity thoughts and then make a habit of doing so. For the thing that keeps most people poor is the sheer habit of poverty thinking. If you want congenial companionship, if you want to be loved, if you must first think thoughts of love and goodwill. Like begets like. In another way of saying the great law, which means that as a man soweth in his unseen thoughts, so shall he reap in that which is seen. All things work together for good to those who love good. And to love good means to occupy oneself with thoughts of good. When people awaken to a knowledge of these great truths, they naturally try to begin to apply them in their own lives, realizing at last the vital importance of righteousness, or the thinking only of harmonious thoughts. They, as sensible people, begin immediately to try to put their house in order. The principle involved is perfectly simple, but unfortunately, the doing of it is anything but easy. Now, why should this be so? The answer lies in the extraordinary potency of habit. And habits of thinking are at once the most subtle in character and the most difficult to break. It is easy, comparatively speaking, to break a physical habit, if one really means business, because action on the physical plane is so much slower and more palpable than on the mental plane. In dealing with habits of thought, however, we cannot, so to say, stand back and take a comparative detached view, as we can in contemplating our actions. Our thoughts flow across the stage of consciousness in an unbroken stream, and so rapidly that only unceasing vigilance can deal with them. And again, the theater of one's actions is the area of his immediate presence. I can act only where I am. I may give orders by letter or telephone, or I may press a button and bring the results at a distance, but still my actions happen where I am, and at the present moment in time. In thought, on the contrary, I can range over the whole area of my life, including all the people with whom I have been or am in any way concerned, and I can soar away into the past or into the future with equal ease. We see, therefore, how much bigger the task of achieving all-round harmonious thinking or true righteousness is than appears at first sight. For this reason, many people become discouraged with themselves and indulge in a great deal of self-condemnation because they do not very speedily change the whole current of thought over the whole area of their lives, destroy the old Adam, as Paul says, in a very short time. This, of course, is a capital mistake, and incidentally, self-condemnation, being an essentially negative and therefore unrighteous thought, tends to produce still more trouble. In the old vicious cycle, if you are not progressing as fast as you wish to, the remedy is to be still, more careful, and hold only harmonious thoughts. Do not dwell upon your mistakes or upon the slowness of your progress, but claim the presence of God within you, and the more in the teeth of the discouraging suggestion. All the more in the teeth of the discouraging suggestion. Claim wisdom, claim power, or prosperity in prayer. Have a mental stock-taking or a review of your life and see if you are not still thinking wrongly in some section or other of your mind. Is there something wrong? Is there some wrong line of conduct that you are still pursuing? Is there somebody whom you have not yet forgiven? Are you indulging in any kind of political or racial or religious sectarian hatred or contempt? This is sure to be disguising itself under the cloak of self-righteousness. If it is there. If it is, tear off the cloak and get rid of the evil thing, for it is poison to your heart. Is there some kind of jealousy left in your heart? It may be personal or it may be professional. The odious thing is a good deal more common than would be readily admitted in polite society. If it is there, cut it out at any cost. And there any sentimental regrets or purposeless yearnings for the impossible. If so, reflect that as an immortal being, the Son of God, holding spiritual dominion. No good thing is out of your reach here and now. Waste no more time repining for what is over and done, but make the present and the future a splendid realization of your heart's desire. Is there remorse for mistakes past and gone? Then remember that remorse, as distinct from repentance, is merely a form of spiritual pride. To revel in it, as some people do, is treason to the love and forgiveness of God, who says, "Behold, now is the day of salvation. Behold, I make all things new." In this beatitude, Jesus tells us not to be discouraged because we do not overcome everything at once, because our progress seems slow if we are not making any progress at all. Then we cannot be praying in the right way, and it is for us to find our way by examining our lives and by praying for wisdom and guidance. Indeed, we should constantly pray for wisdom and guidance and for the living action of the Holy Spirit upon us, that the quality of our prayers, our prosperity, may constantly increase. But if we are moving, if things are improving, although not very quickly it may be, we have no need to be discouraged. We need only to work on steadily, and provided we are truly wholehearted in our efforts, provided, that is to say, that we really are hungering and thirsting for righteousness, then, at last, we shall surely be filled. It could not happen that a wholehearted search for truth and righteousness, if persevered in, could not be crowned with success. God is not mocked, nor does he mock his children. Whew. That was, first of all, there's a lot of exciting stuff in this one. I do want to say that right at the front end. I really enjoy this one. I love the understanding of righteousness that he gives and the implication it has for what we do in our lives on a daily basis. Now, I do apologize if you feel like I stuttered more often in this one than I have in the past, so I apologize for that. What that usually means, though, is there's stuff in here I have to pay attention to. I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but when I start forgetting something regularly, or I start to have trouble with the things I'm reading, it's usually because there's part of it that I need to take a look at. So I'm excited for this, to kind of get into this a little bit. It was a longer reading today, so I'll try to keep this a little bit shorter than the 45 minutes, so we don't go over the 45 minutes. So the first thing I did really kind of want to jump into is just what it immediately reminds me of is the seek and ye shall find. And then if for those in the 12-step community, the saying God could and would if he were sought. That comes to mind while reading this, and the power that statement itself has. And this is really just an expansion of that statement, that if you seek righteousness, you will surely find it. And as long as you have the willingness to follow through with what it demands. So the first thing he does, though, I mean, it's so interesting to me because we try to read these passages with modern definitions, and we just fall down. It's not necessarily any fault of our own, in the sense of we're doing the best we can with the resources that are available, and we might not even know how much a definition's changed or the implication a word actually has. So he starts right off by reminding us, or by bringing the term righteousness into question, or into definition, more so. Like we've had to do with the word earth and meek and comfort, right? For they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, right? So he's starting right out saying, first we have to get an understanding truly of what this righteousness is. And I love the way he talks about it. I really think the way he introduces it and defines it is incredible. It goes right along. This whole chapter, this whole beatitude actually goes right along with the book we did previous to Sermon on the Mount, which was James Allen's As a Man Thinketh. And this beatitude is right in line with it. So I'm going to read how he defines it right out of the book. And he says, righteousness means in the Bible not merely right conduct, but right thinking on all subjects in every department of life. So 3 things. Right conduct, but not just that, because a lot of people wanted to take the actions and have the wrong mindset behind them. So it's right conduct, right thought in every department of life. So not just where you find it convenient. That's part of my recovery. That's part of my spiritual journey. That's part of what I'd like to incorporate into my life as thoroughly as possible, is practicing these principles in all my affairs. I like to really dig in and try to do that part of in every department of life. I don't get rid of my hatred in regards to work and hold on to it in my personal life, in my family life, or in my friendships, right? Like, these are a complete and thorough pursuit of righteousness in every way and aspect and area of my life. And that is the righteousness we're talking about in this beatitude. It's not just like going through the motions. Many, many people do that. And they believe that is righteous living. And by this definition, it's much more than that. It's much more than just checking some boxes. It's much more than forcibly taking actions that you find inconvenient. Now, there's something to be said for doing that. I don't want to take away from that, but the reality of it is that's not true righteousness. Now, that's at least not the righteousness we're talking about here. So I wanted to put that. So it's thoughts and actions in every area of your life. So right thought and actions in every area of your life, right? And righteous, which then leads to righteous thought. So this brings in a concept that James Allen talked about regularly, and I hear people giving conflicting points of view on this relatively often as well, that we can't control our thoughts. And I'm under the belief that after enough time, effort, and direction and persistence, your thoughts can come into line, as long as and being careful and being purposeful about what you're actually feeding into yourself. I'm not just talking about food wise. I'm talking about the relationships you engage in and you maintain in, and the news you consume, and the media you consume, and the conversations that you have. All of that going in as well as a purposeful and intentional desire to change your thinking gives us the opportunity to change it. And why it's important that we could change both our thinking and our actions into righteousness, into a righteous way of thinking and living. They say thoughts and actions is really will in our lives. And if you're familiar with 12-step, that's the third step, is will in our lives. People translate that to thoughts and our actions. And I believe that goes hand in hand. I believe that's correct assessment of that from that perspective. And so we can control these things. We're not the victim of our own thinking anymore. We're not just the victim of whatever anyone else wants to push towards us and influence us to think. Uh, we need to be aware of these things, and we need to hold ourselves responsible for these things. It's quite important to do so. So this is where some of this exciting stuff really comes in, actually, because we're going to start talking about what we talked about with James Allen, which is the thoughts navigate the external world, right? This is a very powerful understanding we get to talk about again here, is that you have so much potential capability, power, strength by being willing to change your thinking, right? By being willing to actually take actions differently because you're thinking differently. So he says the entire Sermon on the Mount results in and constantly discusses the universal law that this external world is merely just an expression of our internal thought process and thought life, right? So he says, what did he say? He said, expressed or pressed out, or an outpicturing of our inner thoughts and beliefs. We have dominion or power over thoughts to think as we will. Now, especially with a lot of mental health crises that have been going on and the mental health expansion, that comes with a lot of good things, but I think it also comes with a lot of misunderstandings. Now, the thought process has to be changed, or the realization has to be made that you're no longer the victim of your own circumstances. You're the person that creates them. And you can change your perspective, your understanding, right where you are, with nothing physically changing on the outside. But you can start changing you and your thought patterns, the way you think and the way you approach the world. And what's incredible is how quickly your reality can actually change. So it goes thoughts drive actions, actions drive and mold reality. So logically and realistically, we're not just talking about metaphysical manifestation things or anything like that, but realistically and logically, it's pretty obvious that what you think about drives your actions, and what your actions are determines the reality and the consequences you are bringing into your life. So this is important stuff to understand. And then he goes into how we're actually responsible for the direction our lives take, right? We have a hand in the destiny that we're dealt. There's some, I'm under the personal belief, I guess you should know this about me, that we have a choice. We have free will, and we have a choice how we use that every day. Now, will I use it to serve myself, or will I use it to serve God and others? Whatever that God of yours might be, what will you choose to use your will for? And that tells me, and that shows me, that I can create either a world of hell around me or a world of service and heaven around me. And that's completely within my control by choosing what perspective I want to take. It might not immediately change overnight, but like I said, it will change faster potentially than you realize, which is pretty amazing. And what's also, it seems rather obvious, and we talked about this again with James Allen, but we cannot think one thing and produce another. Definitely not consistently. If we're talking about recovery, right? Or we're talking just life in general, you can only maintain a forced external change for so long. It will always be a temporary change until you decide you want to change the thinking that happens behind it, right? So I talked about this a lot when I was doing the year of James Allen. There's just so much that has to happen. A forced change externally, like you get in trouble and you need to change the way you behave for a little bit, or your partner threatens to leave you, so you start changing temporarily, but you don't actually believe it's a problem what they're bringing up. You don't actually believe that you need to change that entirely, right? So you leave the thinking that's behind it. You leave the motivating, driving factors that caused the action. It's literally a matter of time. If you change behaviors without changing the thinking, it's a temporary change. It will only ever be a temporary change. Could only lead to misery and pain. So I encourage you to take a look at these things, and take the steps you need to take to actually get a permanent change to give you a contented and happy life. Now, I wanted to read what he was kind of talking about with this. So we're going to go bottom of 33 here. It's talks about this great law, and just the concepts around it, I guess, which are important. So the great law of the universe, however, is just this: that you think in your mind, what you think in your mind, you will produce in your experience. As within, so without. You cannot think one thing and produce another. If you want to control your circumstances for harmony and happiness, you must first control your thoughts for harmony and happiness, and then the outer things will follow. It just falls into place. It's like dominoes. Push the first thing. You're setting yourself up for success if you can change it in here and move forward. And I like the example he gives later in this paragraph, actually. If you want health, you must first think health. And remember, thinking health thinking health does not mean merely thinking a healthy body, which is important. Important as that is, but it also includes thinking peace and contentment and goodwill to all. For, as we shall see later in the sermon, destructive emotion is one of the primary causes of disease. If you want spiritual unfoldment and growth in the knowledge of God, you must think spiritual thoughts, God thoughts, okay, God-like thoughts, Christ-like thoughts, righteous thoughts, and give your attention, which is your life, to God rather than to limitation, right? So don't just think, oh, I want this healthy body anymore, right? Because the reason your body is sick is because of the thinking that's gone into it, right? And the decisions you've made, the food you've consumed, the behavioral patterns and habits that you've continued to engage in is a problem. And it's caused these reactions. It's caused these circumstances. So to think only, hey, just fix this body, right? You're setting it up to have a sick body again and going through the entire process again. And it's kind of a painful thing to realize with that. But there's a lot more to thinking about than just, hey, give me a healthy body. Hey, give me a healthy mind. Hey, give me a healthy perspective, so I can actually move forward and change my life, right? And now the next one is about prosperity that I wanted to read as well, which I know is a lot of reading, but it's important stuff here. This is exciting, but it's important. The mismanagement of these principles, the mismanagement of these universal laws, as he calls it, will lead you to frustration, will lead you to bewilderment, anger, and despair. Because if you don't know what we're actually getting to here, what we're actually talking about, and you keep trying to practice in ways that don't work, it gets exhausting. So this stuff is important. It's powerful. It's important. It's exciting. It's empowering. So, but we're talking about prosperity in this next paragraph that I wanted to read. If you want material prosperity, you must first think prosperity thoughts and then make a habit of doing so. Make a habit of doing so. Not just one. Continue the line of thinking. For the thing that keeps most people poor is the sheer habit of poverty thinking. Okay. This is a great example of what we're talking about here. If you continue to think as a person in poverty, you will continue to act like a person in poverty. And someone could give you $10 million, could give you a fortune, and you will end up in the same place because you haven't changed your thinking, which drives your actions. And that might seem ridiculous to some, but just go check out lottery winners. Go check out these people that have been giving these massive lumps of money and end up broke, even potentially worse off than they were prior to getting the money years later. It's because they haven't changed the thinking, right? Must make a habit of doing so. For the thing that keeps most people poor is the sheer habit of poverty thinking. If you want congenial companionship, love, how many people say, I want a boyfriend, I want a girlfriend, I want to get married, I want to have kids. They pinning their happiness on this external relationship with another human being. If you want congenial companionship, if you want to be loved, you must first think thoughts of love and goodwill. You have to first have that within you. You have to first have these understandings and this sense of love and fulfillment within yourself before you go demand somebody else give it to you to fulfill you. It's selfish. It's self-centered. And the thing is, you'll never get a genuine relationship out of that because you're constantly demanding that the other person do what you need them to do so you feel secure, so you feel safe, so you feel worth, you feel valued. And that's not fair. So no one signs up for that. That's a codependent, unhealthy relationship because you're taking selfish actions to feed yourself only, which is a little unnerving because there's so many people that are on this path. But you must first think thoughts of love and goodwill. Like begets like. This was a painful one for me to realize because I had to sit there and take a look at all of my relationships. That means family, friends, romantic partners, and actually say, well, if like begets like, I must be a sick person. Guess what? I was a sick person. I was a very, very sick person. And that was a very painful, understanding I had to come to. I would have much rather, in some moments, not today, because I've worked through it and I've done a lot of work around this, but at one point in the beginning and throughout the years of working on it, I would have much rather stayed in that blissful ignorance, but I would have always been miserable. I would have never made changes. Would have never made progress. But once your eyes are open to it, you can't help but see it. So, like begets like. I offer you that as a spiritual truth and principle. Use that as a judgment or a ruler of your own spiritual health. Who do you surround yourself with? Like begets like. Like begets like is another way of stating the great law, which means that a man soweth in his unseen thoughts, so shall he reap that which is seen. Whatever's going on out here is going to show up out here. It does for me every time. I can't hide it. And I get to, because I know that, and because I believe that, and I can see it when it's happening to somebody else. I can see it when somebody's world's coming crashing down around them because they didn't become fully honest with themselves. And it's sad, but also there's some hope that they'll actually learn the lesson they're supposed to learn. And that's what we pray for. But like begets like, another way to say the great law. All things work together for good to those who love good. And to love good means to occupy yourself with thoughts of good. So if you're looking for negative stuff, you're going to find it. If you're looking for good stuff, you're going to find it. If you hunger and thirst for righteousness, you're going to find it. That's where we're going with this, right? So the next part, we're going to talk a little bit about how, well, remember, this is one of the most powerful things we get to do here. This is some of the most influential stuff we get to talk about, is how what we are pursuing, the ideal, where we're going towards the ideal that you've picked, which could be a righteous character, which could be a Christ-like character, which could be a Buddha temperament, a Buddha-like character. There's a lot of healthy idols out there. I don't want to say idols, that's the wrong word to use. Examples, ideals, that's the word I was trying to say, not idols. Make sure you're not worshiping the person. Don't create yourself a false god, right? I guess I'll say it like that. But you have these ideals and behavior that embody spiritual principle like love and forgiveness and kindness and joy and strength and courage and faith and hope and honesty, integrity, right? Like, these are the things that we strive towards. These are the targets at the end of the hall that we're running towards. And that doesn't mean we're perfect, but we are in the pursuit of an ideal. So, because we're in pursuit of that ideal, right? And we're aiming for righteous and pursuing righteous thoughts and actions in all developments of our life. We talk a little bit about how the mind is the harder thing here to change, because physical changes, though temporary in their effectiveness, if the thinking is not changed, are generally easier to observe and to consciously try to change, right? And he says, and I like what he said here, actually, that it's because the physical is easier, and because the only thing I can do is take action right here and right now, right? He's like, I can take actions in this immediate place, in this immediate moment, that might affect other locations, that might affect things down the line, that might do a whole lot of stuff. But the reality of it is that if I push a button, if I make a phone call, I am only where I am at that singular moment in time, right? So we can watch ourselves and take different actions on a day-by-day basis, action-by-action basis. And it's just one thing at a time. When we're talking about changing our thinking, this is why the association that our thinking can never change, we can't control our thoughts, blah, 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 blah. This is where this comes from, because it's so vast. It's such an immense thing to actually do. He talks about, which is interesting when you think about it this way, with the physical things we have to change, like to strive towards righteousness with our physical actions. We just have to make a righteous decision in every action we take. Now, and again, that action can only happen right here, right now. So he brings an interesting point up where he's like, the problem with establishing righteous thinking is because you can go anywhere. Like, your mind has the ability to transport you back years and forward decades, where you can have where your unrighteous thinking can actually continue to take place in these locations, right? So to change thinking now, to change what's going on in your head now, is a very much bigger thing than we realize, because we have to change our perspective on the past. We have to change our perspective on the future. We have to change how we think about the present moment and the mindfulness of that. So having righteous and harmonious action or thoughts, which will then drive our actions and allow us to maintain those external changes that we've talked about, those changes in behaviors, to make those permanent. It's quite a task. And he's funny, because he talks about this, right? That righteous thinking is going to be the difficult part of this journey for us. He goes in to say, but don't beat yourself up about it. Don't commit the sin of pride and self-centeredness and self-pity. Don't be self-condemning, because that's just ego, and that's giving into your negative thinking. That's the old way of thinking. If you screw up, or if you deviate from the path you'd like to be on, correct it and move forward, right? I like how he said here, where did I have it? You're not progressing. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Do not dwell upon your mistakes or present slowness of your progress, but claim the presence of God is with you, right? All the more in the teeth of the discouraging suggestion, right? So challenge those thoughts that you think are holding you back. Don't stay in the past. Address it now. Take the correct action now and go forward. Do not get lost to these self-centered regrets and the self-centered fear of the future. So purposely focus on moving forward. It's really quite important when we talk about it like that. And then I'm going to read this. This will be the last. I don't know. This will be the last part that I read. If you're constantly finding yourself falling down, if you're having behaviors that won't change, we need to do this inventory process. We need to actually, and this is an inventory process that I think is really effective. It's a opportunity to find more places to grow for yourself. And I'll try to wrap this up here soon. This is the last thing, actually. Have a mental stock taking or review of your life and see if you are not still thinking wrongly in some section or other area of your life. Is there some wrong line of conduct that you are still pursuing? Is there somebody whom you have not yet forgiven? Are you indulging in any kind of political or racial or religious sectarian hatred or contempt? And he tells you where to look next. This is sure to be disguising itself under a cloak of self-righteousness, if it is there. If it is, tear off the cloak and get rid of the evil thing, for it is poison to your life. Is there some kind of jealousy left in your heart? That's, I think, the sixth one, right? It may be personal or might be professional. The odious thing is a good deal more common than we readily admit in polite society. If it is there, cut it out at any cost. Cut it out at any cost. Like, just remove it from your mind, your character, your soul. Are there any sentimental regrets or purposeless yearnings for the impossible? If so, reflect that as an immortal being, the Son of God, holding spiritual dominion, no good can come out of your reach here and now. Waste no more time repining for what is over and done, but make the present and future splendid. A splendid realization of your heart's desire. Is a remorse for mistakes past and gone, then remember that remorse as distinct from repentance is merely a form of spiritual pride. To revel in it, as some do, is treason to the love and forgiveness of God, who says, "Behold, now is the day of salvation. Behold, to make all things new." This is supposed to be about making progress. So if we're constantly having these fall downs, if we're constantly getting lost in these things, we need to do these types of inventories and take an honest look. And if you need help, talk to other people about it, right? I've had to do that many times. Where am I falling down here? Why am I not seeing this thing? Why am I constantly making these mistakes? And you'll get there, but you have to be willing to actually do it. And I love this beatitude because it doesn't demand perfection from you, but it does tell you to respect the process and the journey of this whole thing. So to that it is a journey, because he says those who hunger and thirst, so they're in the pursuit of it. You will find it, and you will continue to find it. Stay in a place of teachability and willingness, because it all stems from those things. Respect the process. Enjoy the process, because the process is what we actually get. And it'll turn out all right. So that is going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoy that reading as much as I do. I love all of these Beatitudes. They all have a very large spot in my heart, very impactful to me, and I hope you find them to be the same way. So we'll look forward to it. Next week, we're going to be doing Blessed are the Merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. So until next time, thanks.